1, 2, 3, 4.
Y'all ready for this?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Never been done before.
We're talking about a subject.
To bring you to the light.
Farewell to you, people.
What's happening, good people? We are live and direct. This is Hard Knock Radio on the Pacifica Radio Network. I am Kalonji Changa, filling in for our main man, Davey D. Today, I wanted to talk about something that is a very serious situation, something that we all are familiar with unless we were under a rock, and that being the 20-year commemoration of the assault on New Orleans, on the terrorism that took place in New Orleans, that being Hurricane Katrina. And to talk about Katrina and this, I hate to use the word anniversary because to me, anniversary seems like a celebration. And there was too many losses to celebrate. So we choose to say commemoration. And today I called in, wanted to get my sister on board, a sister I've been knowing for quite a while, pre-Katrina, and she's been rocking before and after and still here. So we wanted to get a strong analysis. We have today our sister Sunni Patterson. Sunni, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good. Blessed by the best.
Blessed by the best. Now that's a
by the
serious
best.
thing. I'm about to rhyme with you, but I don't want cats to be hating out there. You know what I mean? They'll be like, Kalonji think he rock him or somebody. I don't want to do all that. So I'm gonna leave that to you.
Yes,
Katrina. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We talk about Katrina. We talk about 2 decades later. Does it feel like 2 decades later?
No, not at all. That's how you know time is a social construct.
Indeed.
Because it really, I don't know what, even when I think about it, I don't know what 20 years feels like, and maybe that's dependent upon what the situation is. But because that's really how we tell time in New Orleans. Before Katrina, after Katrina, and Ben. That's a time in New Orleans. Ben. Since when? Since Ben. That mean a long time. But I don't know, because there's so many things that literally is like yesterday. So that's how we know when we're talking about a social construct, a feeling. How we can say, man, it feel like today feel like a Sunday,
Right.
or it feel like these kind of things. That's how I liken it. So I can't say it feels like 20 years, because when in saying it 20 years could sound like a long time, but it feel like yesterday.
Feel like
And
yesterday.
especially when you're still dealing with the effects and ramifications of a thing. But I mean, that's life in general, right? We're still dealing with the effects and ramification of enslavement, of this, of that, of we can come up with all kinds of stuff. But the reality is that um we're still in it. Literally, we are still in it.
Still in it. That's
Yeah.
serious. It feels like a Minnie Riperton song, Memory Lane. When folks, if you weren't around or if you didn't witness it firsthand, sometimes when folks talk about Katrina, it's sort of like this mystical, magical moment.
Yeah.
And some people look at it as a mythological moment.
Mm.
For folks who weren't around, you being in New Orleans at the time, and all of a sudden it's this lead up, they're saying that it's going to be this hurricane, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
What give us, give us that, what did that look like, leading up to Katrina?
Mm. So I think because in New Orleans we're so used to water, we're used to rain, we're used to hurricanes. That's what made it so easy for so many people to not leave. And also because evacuation is not a cheap process either.
Yes.
Evacuation is extremely expensive. It's emotionally costly. It's mentally taxing. Physically, that's a whole nother piece when you're talking about, you know, money and everything. What it is you have to gather. So it's so much that goes into evacuating. If you have family, right? If you can go, some just it's so many factors and so many things that we can put in. So, those were things that were thought about. It was just really the question and the doubt of, should we leave? It might be something else. It might be, it may pass. It may be this. It may be that. All of those things that kind of come up. Um, I know for myself, what was something was to see animals. That's how I knew that something too was coming. Animals kept trying to come in. You looked at birds were leaving.
Mm.
Um, what was deep? It was a couple things. My dogs were like outside dogs. They kept trying to come inside. Um, It kept coming in. It was like, what is going on? They kept wanting to come inside. That wasn't something they would ever want to do. And
Mm.
again, all of this is before the storm, right?
Right.
It was, what else was crazy? Rats. Or some people say it wasn't rats, it was mice. I don't care. All of it be the same at this point.
Same gang.
Um, yeah, same game. They were even coming in the house. This was something we never had to deal with.
Mm.
We ended up like right before, say a week, maybe two before the storm. It was mice constantly coming and we would catch, it would be like six on a trap at a time type of stuff.
Wow.
It was wild. Um, so it was those kind of indications that kept kind of nudging at me. And I would say for myself, it was still a thing of, I'm gonna just stay. We're just gonna stay home. We didn't make the decision to really leave until that Sunday, which was the day before um the hit in that way. Um, it was so much. It was, and let me say this, the city was in disarray, as is crime. We were dealing with, what people say, oh, it was so many things before Katrina. You be like, yeah, New Orleans was a little rough now. This was,
Right.
this wasn't it wasn't Disney World for sure. um, it was a lot that was going on. It was a thing of it was a cleansing that needed to happen in the streets at the same time. And this is not saying that we needed that much water, right?
Right.
But
Right.
it is saying that there was a metaphysical cleansing and clearing that absolutely needed to happen on the one tip, right? But we also know that this again was not just like we would say, this wasn't just a natural disaster. This was just a natural phenomenon, but it was absolutely a man-made disaster. So it was something that still, yes, when we're talking about a metaphysical clearing and cleansing, this was also a very physically violent approach to ethnic cleansing as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
So when we're, dealing with these kind of things and these kind of terms and really moving under the watch of a destroyer's eye in this way, um, we also see what happened. We also see the deliberate murder of a people. We also see the deliberate murder of a culture. We also see the deliberate attempt to try to kill a spirit of a people. So see, even when we say things like um, we with anniversary and celebration, which I absolutely agree with, but at the same time, New Orleans is such a place of celebration. It's such a place of what some people would say this is a place. Okay, yeah, it's a party place. It's the Big Easy, but I will go even further to say that those are still methods of medicine for us
Mm.
that some people will never understand. Even the people that are here, it's some things that we would never understand because we're so in it. We're so much a part of it. It's so much a part of us that when it comes down to actually understanding this aspect of what it means to stump the concrete, of what it means to, dance a devil off your back, what it means to, all of these kind of things, what it means to strengthen the nervous system, all of these kind of things. Nah, people, we're not looking at things like that when we think about this aspect of what it means to commemorate, um, and go back and look at the last 20 years, right, of this levee breaching, of this. It's such a horrendous act because it's something. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm going through and stuttering because I'm looking at places. I'm looking at homes that were there that's not. I'm looking at and remembering, coming back and seeing cars flipped on top of houses, to see
Wow.
cars, um to see two cars like on top of each other,
Hmm.
then to
Wow.
see those cars on top of a house, to see, I mean, it was something. These were amazing sights. You understand what I'm saying? It truly
Wow.
was something out of, it's something out of not just a horror movie, but like something that you would think could never be able to happen,
Right.
but it did, you know.
So, and I'm listening to you, and I had the chance to watch a little bit of that new documentary on Hulu with Malik Rahim and others. And shout out to
Mm,
Baba Malik. We'll
indeed.
have him on it some other time, but um, and I'm thinking about it, and you using the word deliberate, and I want to
Mm-hmm.
know, what does that mean? Because when we hear deliberate, that's a serious thing. You
Yeah.
mentioned words like murder, you mentioned ethnic
Yeah.
cleansing, you
Yeah.
mentioned violence, and to the average person, they're not seeing or won't understand that. So elaborate, what does that mean? Because of the fact that there's folks like, what you mean it was violent? What do you mean it was deliberate?
Yeah. So, we already know and have already seen, history has told us that, as it relates to, um what does it mean to redirect water in the city, right? What does it mean to save certain areas and not others? Um so we already know what that means, places that um bring in more money, so your central business district, and all of these kind of things. We've seen that again, where yes, water has flooded other areas instead of those areas. We've also seen where a bridge, right, has been built in black owned areas, to navigate traffic away from certain areas. We've seen that with what we would consider, like in the Claiborne corridor, many years ago as well. So these are not things that are um, things that are by happenstance, right? It's again, when I'm saying deliberate, I'm saying the on purpose moves to ensure that some places and people are saved before others, right? Um, and that's deliberate. That's again on purpose. That is with the understanding that others will die and others will live. Um, so we have that. We have what also comes as a result of that, which is what we saw happening here in the Algiers Point area, where it was, yeah, no, you would hear people say, we don't want to kill them, but we do want them to not come in this area. Who is the them? You got black folk. Who who are the people who we don't want in this area? Is one, people who do not look like us, do not come past this line. And so what are they exercising now? Granted, all of this is out of a huge fear. At the same time, even if they don't look at it as fear, they can just look at it as, we're just protecting our space. um, and who has determined what is quote unquote our space? what is theirs in this way when everybody is looking for safety, everybody is looking for safe harbor. And what has happened? We're still dealing with a family when we think about, the brother Henry Glover, who was killed by police and everything here. And what happened with his head? They can't find his head. The family was still looking for his head.
Henry Glover. A lot of
Yeah.
folks aren't familiar with Henry Glover. Can you kind of give us some background on Henry Glover, who Henry Glover was or is?
Yeah. So Henry Glover was one of the people, one of the brothers who was shot and killed by police officer. And again, these are times where people are looking for safety, safe harbor, looking for what to do, where to be, what to eat, all these kind of things. He was shot by a police officer. His body was actually found like in a car, I want to say, that
Mm.
was burned in a burned up car. But also the thing was, his head was missing. So
Wow.
that was a big part about what happened. Um, and I was saying that in reference to how this thing of a head being missing, what that means. Even as I fast forward to earlier this year, when we just had 19 skulls returned from Germany, black people's heads that were taken and studied, that were stolen from or taken from the hospital here in New Orleans, brought there, studied, and they were just returned. And this was centuries ago,
Right.
and was just returned this year. So I'm
That's
thinking about what this means, this aspect of missing heads, and something like this. So it's something because his family, when I go back to Henry Glover and I go back to this jump in time again, his family still has not found his head, you know. So
wow.
this is something that this is something that comes up so often, I think, in my mind, so often to my memory, that pops up. This is why I'm saying, when we were talking about this aspect of time, does it feel like 20 years? I don't know if something feels like 20 years because it's it's things that make a constant pop up. It's a constant reminder, that there are things still happening. It's a constant reminder that, yes, time is moving, but how is it moving? Is it spiraling? Is it circling? Is it, one thing I know is that it's not linear,
Right.
because we keep revisiting. There's something that's here. There's something that keeps bringing us and pulling us back to this aspect of memory in this way. Something that continues to um, force us to, when I'm saying remember, really what that means, to put ourselves together again, to consistently member ourselves, to do what needs to be done to uh, keep our memories intact, to do what needs to be done to keep our spirits intact, to do what needs to be done to keep our lives intact, and what that means for one another, what that means for culture and community, what that means for gathering spaces, because that's really what Katrina was as well. It wasn't just an attack on an attack on people. This was an attack on gathering spaces. This was an
Right.
attack on, what does it mean to display culture? What does it mean to display spirit? Especially when I keep going back to that, which is this thing of the medicine of celebration, the medicine of what it means to dance, the medicine of what it means to, again, pound the concrete, the medicine of what it means to, bring these aspects of our culture forward so that we're able to survive.
You mentioned that, and you gave me a different perspective because I always, as an organizer, I looked at
Hmm.
myself and many others. We look at New Orleans as a hard nut to crack because
Yeah.
one of the yeah
It is.
what yeah one of the reasons is because of what you said, the whole party aspect.
Yeah.
And up until you saying at this moment, it being used as medicine and folks not even realizing that they're using it as medicine, it strikes me almost like a high. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's so much going on. We gotta celebrate, we gotta laugh to keep from crying. So that's
Oh
kind
no,
of
that's absolutely it too.
yeah,
It's now this is not saying that it's not a quote unquote escape,
right,
right? But it
right.
is saying that. So it was a program I had where the thing for me was to study um this aspect of music notes, and how these notes and what notes correspond to organs in the body. And
Mm,
so one note with the feet and circulatory system was this B note, right? So it's something because um, when looking this up and studying this and doing this in this way, I asked a dear brother of mine, Stafford Agee, who is with Rebirth Brass Band. I said, well, what note is like second line songs, played in? He was like, oh, it's, B, like B, and, going through the whole thing. I'm like, dang, you can't make this up. Because something so like the dance, right? When we dance into, say, a second line song, we call that footwork,
mm.
right? So to know that these notes are, I'm sure they didn't know. Well, I can't say I'm sure, right? That they didn't know. Maybe they did. Who knows? And again, that's the part of ancestral memory in that way. That they may have known, they may not have known, but they knew. you know,
Right.
when we look at that and we look at, I was like, wow. As soon as he said that, I was like, you gotta be kidding me, right? So I was looking at that. So when I looked at this particular program, was just on as far as community health and what that means, because the reality is that too, when you hear this music, um say like, you've been here, so you've been a part of a second line and everything. You can walk miles and miles with that band and not feel no way.
That's right.
Let that band stop playing.
Right.
It's people complain, oh, it's hot, it's too long, we can't
Right.
make it,
Right.
it's this,
Right.
we can't do, right? All of these kind of things. So I'm saying this because this also is, not only is it an ancestral remedy, but it is something that is allowing us to, yes, feel what this means to create an intentional soundtrack for healing, right? So what does that mean for us to heal up our nervous systems? What does that mean for us to bring this element of science into our this aspect of spirituality? What does that mean for us to do this work of really healing and circulating blood in this way? What does that mean for us to do this kind of work? I think about this when we have the second line that goes from which is coming up on the on the 29th, which is something we've been doing for 19 years. That's also been led by a close brother of mine, Cess 45, who's a rapper and organizer and activist and just all around good brother here in the city. Cess 45 and his other brother Sino. Um, so we start at the Levee breach in the Ninth Ward. We start there um, with the second line, start there and move from there, from the Levee breach, and go down to Huntersville. Years ago, well, the first one we used to go to Congo Square, um, and then we started uh, going to Huntersville. But when you think about this and you think about this aspect of travel. You think about this way of, again, feet in concrete. You think about this way of what does this really mean? Because even in our African spiritualities, right, the thing is we stump the ground. Why do we stump the ground? We stump the ground so ancestors can appear. Why do we stump the ground so ancestors can appear? Because we consider this aspect of ground to be their domain in this way, right? We also consider that that's also dealing with certain chakras. We're talking about this aspect of earth chakra, not even just root chakra, but this earth chakra that deals with just that earth, bones, ancestors, climate, environment, all of these kind of things. So when we're doing this, again, people may not be, they may not say, oh yes, I'm going to the second line so I can, help balance my 10th chakra. Yeah, we might not be saying things like that, but it's something that is happening anyway. And so that's the place that I like to rest in. The what is happening anyway, the what is happening even when we are unaware that it is happening. And it is so much that's happening even when we are unaware. So I like staying in the space between the blinks, the space between the inhalation and the exhalation, the space in between there that allows us to really know why we are really moving and living, why we have our being in this way, and then we start getting glimpses. We start getting other glimpses of what does that mean, and what is like literally what does it mean for complete healing? What does it mean for us to be able to move in unison, in concert, in harmony as a people, even if we're not seeing it this way? This is what is happening. This aspect of music, this aspect of sound, this aspect of breath, this aspect of dance. Literally, that is what this is about, how we're dancing together the, through the misorganization, the disorganization, the displacement, everything else that comes. This truly is this aspect of medicine. Now, does this take the place of organizing, mobilizing, galvanizing? No, it doesn't take the place of, but it is in addition to. It is a supplement. It's the
Right.
other vitamin C. Like one of
Okay.
my one of my mamas here would say, and even I dear mama Marimba out there, she would say as well, when we're talking about this aspect of culture, that culture is when I think of Mama Carol as well, culture is the other vitamin C. So we can't
Okay.
leave that out when we're using our medicinal practices in order to, again, survive. So that's one part as it relates to this work. This thing of Katrina. I think about this because I look at all the organizations that have come. 20 years is, yes, it's a significant time, but 19 was, 18 was, 17 was, 60, so forth and so on, right? So the thing is, we're seeing so many things. We see 20 years, yeah, we had Katrina, but then again, not too long after that, we had the other hurricane, right? So that was something that we had to, that people kept gassing up. Listen, okay, here's another storm that's coming. You got to evacuate for this one. You got to do this. You got to do this. And then at that point, because I had already lost everything in Katrina except for 2 dresses and 1 pair of shoes, because I
Wow.
had already lost everything, it was at that point, it was like, okay, it doesn't matter. I could lose it again, right?
Wow.
So you start getting in that kind of way. Even when we look at it now, that's why I'm saying 20 years, when people are like, oh man, I had somebody tell me not too long ago, man, y'all still talking about Katrina.
Wow.
And this is amazing to me,
Wow.
because I'm like, this was yesterday.
Were they from there or what? Is it someone that
No,
was
these
okay?
people were not from they weren't
Okay.
from here. But then you still have people who are also, from here, because it's like, all right, come on, get over it. And this is not to say that
Wow.
it's not a thing of forward motion, right? But it is a thing of, when we are in something and you are so in it and so engulfed in it, and still dealing with policies that was created from it, still dealing with housing that was created from it or lack of, still dealing with um, everything else that comes as a result of, or everything else that didn't come as a result of. Yeah, we all in it.
We're,
um
we're listening to the voice of Sunni Patterson. She's talking about Hurricane Katrina, this being the 20-year commemoration. This is Hard Knock Radio on the Pacifica Network.
mhm.
I am Kalonji Changa filling in for Davey D. Sunny, folks around the country, around the world, you know, sort of like it is with movement work. We sling certain terms around. Folks talk about COINTELPRO, like everybody know what COINTELPRO is. Folks
Right.
talk about capitalism, imperialism, like the whole world know, like your grandmama, your cousins, and everybody know what time it is. When we talk about the levee breach,
Mm-hmm.
most people don't even know what a levee is, number one, or the
Right.
purpose. But number two, the breach itself. Can we talk about that? You talked about the levee breach in the Ninth Ward. This is a multi-pronged question. One, what is a levee? Two, what was the levee breach? And has the Ninth Ward recovered from that breach? Because I think that, again, many of us have come and gone back and forth to New Orleans since Katrina, but
Yes.
there are certain areas that we've gone to, and certain areas are almost forgotten about. Can you speak on that?
Yeah. So a levee, right, is something that almost like a mound, or so I guess you could say, that is built and that was built to keep water in a certain place, right? Which is the place that it belongs, in other words, right?
Right, right.
Also, when I think about these aspects of levees, we also have to think about how so many of our levees first were built by our enslaved ancestors as well, right? So that's one thing I tell anybody when because you can walk on top of the levee, you can walk on, which is a space where you can, ride bikes and so forth and so on, all of these kind of things. But I'm always very clear with people, um, because these levees were also dug out and built with and by the hands, many of them by the hands of our enslaved ancestors. So I'm like, anytime you walk across or walk over a levee, on top of the levee, however you do this in these areas, every step should be a prayer, because this was also work, especially in a place like New Orleans where you didn't have um, it wasn't always like a picking of cotton in this particular place. It wasn't always sugar in this place, right? In this way, because of the type of environment. So when you had this, they would call that kind of urban enslavement, right? Because it wasn't just fields in this
Right,
way,
right.
right? So we're dealing with something like that. So that's one thing. I'm really just saying that so that we could have also an understanding, right, of what a levee is. But even when I think about a levee breach in this way, so again, that is also something where a part of the levee, um how would you say, because it's built to prevent flooding, so a levee breach is intentionally broken. It's something, again, we're going back to that word deliberate. It is deliberate and intentionally broken or blown up, whatever that means for it to be, um whatever that means for it to be, for it to crumble, for it to dissolve, for it to open up in this way. So what happened, it causes the water now to flood an area out, right? So in the area in the ninth ward where, and you had a couple other spaces, but in the area, there in the ninth ward, it absolutely flooded this space. And that's what most people, you have some people who say, we heard the boom, like we heard the bomb, we heard the blow up, we heard the blow up of the levee, things like that. We had some people, I never forget one sister, when she would talk about it, she said, I was standing on the porch, she was like smoking a cigarette. She said, I was standing on the porch smoking a cigarette. She said, then I saw the water rolling up the street. I'll never forget when she said that. She said,
Mm,
and then here come the
mm,
water. The water is rolling up the street, right? So when I think about that image now, it's always something. So you've had other things that happen in the ninth ward. Um, the houses, other houses that have gone up. That's where you had the Brad Pitt housing and so forth and so on, to come, and the housing, some of the housing to be rebuilt and everything. But it's still a lot of things that need to be done, that need to be fixed, because so many of the houses, they haven't held up. You had some that was built with, at that point, a certain type of drywall that, again, that had, what you had FEMA trailers that came up after, and what was in the FEMA trailers, the formaldehyde and everything else, and it was so much that was happening, because again, it's still this thing of, you know not just displacement of people again, but how do we build the people? How do we? It's not just even building houses again. It's how do we construct the heart? How do we construct how do we construct the spirit and the soul again? How do we do all of these things? How do we hold all of these things again, when again it was a deliberate washing? That's one reason why we start this march there, in the Ninth Ward, which this year is a big mural. We had the children of, again, this is something, initiative that was led by Brother Sess. The children, B Mike, and the group that's called the Eternal Seeds, the youth, they painted a beautiful mural now on the space to, yes, commemorate the space, to honor all of the community and the people that have passed, but then also to bring in aspects of the future, what it is that they see for the future. How should the New Orleans look, to them? What do they want to see, for this future? What do they want to see for this way? So, this levee breaching, and this deliberate flooding of the city to save other areas, in some cases to save other
Mhm.
areas, like we said, and kill other people, yeah, it was an on purpose thing.
Question I have that I noticed that it's not often talked about,
Hmm.
and that is around the situation with the militias. We actually had militias that were, I don't know if they were quote unquote sanctioned or they just took it upon themselves to roam through the streets,
Oh
um,
yeah, for sure.
through the water. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't think that folks know the depths of this thing. Because you mentioned Brad Pitt, you mentioned, you know, uh, the
The
quest to
housing.
gentrify. Yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes. So can you speak
Well,
on
let me
that a
say,
little?
and that was one thing with him, with the housing that was created, and the housing that was built is one thing, and that's there, right? That was the housing that was in that area of the Ninth Ward, which is what we consider the lower Ninth Ward, or excuse me, or across the canal. Um, but the militias, again, this is where I do wish Baba Malik was on the line. So when you do speak with him, this is also a big question that's for him, because it's also something that he experienced, um, firsthand, right? So again, that's something in and of itself. You had so much, and again, if we could fathom, and sometimes we just cannot fathom, that these are things that will happen in the midst of a certain kind of destruction. But sometimes we don't fathom these things because it really is unfathomable. It really is something that you would not think would happen, but that's only because of that's only because of, our ignorance to how beasts move. I want to go back to what we were talking about with Algiers Point, because that was something that was huge that was happening down in that, in the area as well. Algiers Point, right, is the point. They call it a point too because it's one of your highest points that's in the city. But Algiers Point was also, the place where, ships of enslavement would stop to drop off cargo, in this way, to be, um, cleaned up, before they are shipped over to the other side of the river here to be sold, right, at, in front of St. Louis Cathedral, in front of the church, which is the area in Jackson Square, right? So, um, that's one, just a historical fact and aspect of the area. Two, the thing was to inhibit other people from coming into the area, because their thing is they're just trying to keep this area safe. But the reality is that people in the area are also looking for safety. So what you had was a lot of white folks who had a lot of guns. So you had these groups, of course, all over because, again, these are things that are activated. This is when you see what is really activated in a person, what's activated in a people, what's activated. When people say they're going in literally beast mode, that's what you saw.
Wow.
You
Wow.
know, that's what you saw. You didn't see, oh yes, let's help everyone out. Let's do that. Yeah, that's not what you saw from certain people. What you saw being activated in people was the inner beast. What
Mm,
you saw being activated in people was their inner killer. What you saw being activated was their inner destroyer and inner destructor. And that's what it was. And then you had, other agencies that were employed to do the same thing because everybody's moving off of fear. Nobody knows what to do here.
right. Right.
So here it is. This is what happens when fear is the number one culprit. This is what happens when fear is the motivating factor. Fear masking as bravery. This is what we saw. And what we saw, also was again this aspect of this white supremacist view that came up, or white supremacy. I'm saying supremacy, but certainly it's white inferiority masking a supreme politic. But this is what we saw, and this is what we continue to see, you know.
No doubt. So, couple more questions. One, post Katrina,
Yeah.
you know, how long were you gone and what was the return like? Because I think that, oftentimes many of us, myself, I was in Atlanta, of course, we
Yeah.
uh, sent aid to Mississippi, to New Orleans, so on and so forth, as much as we could. Um, but we also saw the influx of brothers and sisters who came from there to Atlanta. I know you went to Houston, and I know the folks went, other
Mm-hmm.
places.
Mm-hmm.
What was that return like, and how long were you gone?
Mm, I I stayed in Houston, even though I would be back and forth in New Orleans that first year after Katrina. But I was in Houston for the year. Special thanks to Shape Community Center
No
out
doubt.
there, Baba Deloy out there, the Manil Collection, which is the museum and everything out there. They're the ones who paid for my rent and everything for the year.
Yes.
Um, that's another part. We talking about FEMA. FEMA that wasn't helpful for me. That
Mm,
wasn't a thing of assistance. I will tell anybody, Houston, places like Houston, Miami, um, yeah, at Atlanta when I did get there, but by the time I went to Atlanta, that was just for other reasons. But when we're talking about services and everything in that way, Houston, the people of Miami, those kind of things, those were things that was my FEMA. When I would constantly being on the road and traveling and working and all those kind of things. It was the people that really assisted me. It was the people that fed me and clothed me and housed me and everything in that way. So I'm grateful for community. That's why I will always lift community. And the grateful part about it is that I'm so grateful to be able to find community wherever I go. So give thanks for that and give thanks for every city that was truly a safe harbor and haven um, for me because it wasn't FEMA that did that. Um, or insurance companies and things like this. It really was the people. So Houston, I stayed there for a year, even though, like I said, being back and forth. Now, let me say, I could not come immediately after the storm. I could not come back to New Orleans. I felt like, how in the Bible, it was like the whole thing, you turn back, you look back, you'll turn into a pillar of salt. It was,
right. Right.
one of those
Right.
things. So I couldn't immediately go back, but maybe around that October. Well, no, I went back before that. Um, but when I went back to like be there for a bit, that was October. We went back before just to, of course, to see and to, do all kind of other things, of course, before, but it was just a going in and coming out. Um, and because again, to see that much um, it was too much. To see that much was too much. Um, yeah, it was too much. But at the same time, with being a spiritual worker and doing the things that you have to do spiritually and that you're called to do spiritually, you stay to do the work that you do, and you pick yourself up in the process, and you rely on who you can to hold you through the process as well as you're doing the work. And which was tough because you know a lot of people you don't know how to hold folks through
That's
those
right.
times. um so that's one thing. So when I went back, finally moved fully back to New Orleans, it was after that year was up in Houston. It was like, okay, if I got to start paying rent somewhere, let me start paying where I want to be, right? So I came back to New Orleans right after, yeah, and have been here. And then, well, then I went back to Houston as it because my son was born, so I would kind of be back and forth. I was consistently and constantly on the road, so that was one thing because I was traveling a good bit. Um, During that time too, just for work and performances and teaching and all of those kind of things too. So it was between Houston, New Orleans, Atlanta, and then everywhere else in the world in the midst at the same time. And then I kind of settled in Atlanta for a little bit. The family, we had my family out there, right? And then we moved back to New Orleans, and we are still here in my great grandmother's house, that was auctioned off in the midst of storm and everything else. And again, see, those are the things that we don't always look at because we have the storm, yes, but then it's all the after effects of it. It's what happens with property, what happens with property that's still there. What happens when, okay, just half the house is there, so now we got to get folks to knock the rest down, right?
Right.
Now
Right.
you have to deal with, okay, what do we do? How do we look for, like it was something that my mama could not fathom, and I'll never forget it. She could not fathom. She was like, "Oh, Sonny, see if you could get such and such out the house." And I'm like, "Mama, the no, you can't. There's nothing you can get." "Well, what about the pictures? See about pictures." You're like, "Mama, there's nothing you can get."
Wow.
But
Wow.
I did, I was able to peel back like mud, and I found a picture of my great grandfather,
Mm.
a baby picture of my sister, and a poetry award I won in the fourth grade.
Wow.
And so those are things that became like treasure because nothing else you could get. And that was after, you are literally, nails are, it's like your nails are bending back trying to get through caked up mud to find something that you could hold, something you could keep in the midst of that. But at the same time, I know that I'm a part, being born and raised here and being of this soil in that way. I know that I'm an anchor, right, in this way. So it's a thing that I'm here. you know,
Yeah.
I'm here. This doesn't mean that I can't be quote unquote there, but it does mean that my here has to be very here at the same time. That it has to be something that is that allows us to remember roots in this way, that allows us to know that we are anchoring other things and making sure that other things kind of stay in place so that we can, again, I keep going back to that word, so that we can, yes, survive, but also thrive in a place that is still coming up for air, that is
Right.
still, kind of wading through water, that is still, figuring out and testing out its legs, in this way. You know how if you've been in a pool for so long, you've been in water for so long, it's one of those things that you got to test your legs out. So we
All right.
still testing our legs out.
This is Hard Knock Radio. I'm Kalonji Changa hanging out with Sunni
Yeah,
Patterson. And since Sunni Patterson got the fourth grade award, spit something real quick, if she can.
yeah. Let's
Please do it now.
the poem that first comes to mind is a poem called "We Know This Place," which is something that I think we're dealing with that now as we're looking at what's happening with the 14th Amendment and everything that comes up. But we know this place. For we have glanced more times than we'd like to share into eyes that stare with nothing there behind them but an unfulfilled wish and an unconscious yearning for life, though death rests comfortably beside us at night, their moans are louder. They come to visit the guards at the gate and they stay until morning, torturing their guilt written insides. The silent cries of the keepers are louder than the booms that come from the guns they use to occupy the space, and we know this place. For we have seen more times than we'd like to imagine bloated cadavers, floating through waters of a city gone savage, forage in the land for what can be salvaged, but what can be saved when all is lost. It happened in August, 29 days in. We are now 5 days out of the only place we knew to call house and home. Few things are certain. One, we have no food. Two, there are more bodies lying at the roadside than hot plates being distributed, or first aid being administered, or recognition as a citizen. 14th Amendment, X. Refugee, check. And we know this place. What's ever changing, yet forever the same. Money and power and greed, the game they suck and devour the souls of the slain. Oh, what a feast for the beast at their table of shame, with napkins round necks to catch the blood that drains from the flesh they chew. Oh, it's hell to gain, and we know this place, huh? All too well. Dank with the smell of death and doom, it hovers, it smothers, no growth, no room, no pretty, no please, just gray, just gloom, just born me a hope and it died too soon, just jucking, just jiving, just living, oh, we just fools, and we know this place is decked in all its array and splendor, golden streets with good intentions. They capture our attention with gadgets and inventions. Pesticide the food supply is flu-like symptoms, diabetic condition, a cancer in the system, health on hold, it's a pistol to the temple. Go run to your churches and tell Reverend it's simple. Good works and good deeds is what equals redemption. But tell me, please, Jesus never mentioned how the churchmen get extensions on freedom while children are being fondled from the altar to the streets, then back to the sanctuaries. Oh, it's kind of scary, ain't it? To know that both the prophet and the priest practice deceit, then come to the people and they claim peace, peace. They come to the people and they claim love, love. But look, where is the peace, huh? Where is the love? Where is that balm in Gilead that can heal the wounded soul or make the half man whole? I swear, we know this place because we have vowed before never again to return. But look, here we are. Or we back in the desert, dry mouthed and thirsting for waters from heaven. But come, children, rally round, and maybe together we can make a sound that'll shake the trees or rattle the ground, make strong our knees. We's a freedom bound, and we know this place, huh? Reclaim the crown, hold on to the prize, and never put it down. Be firm in the stance, no breaks, no bows. Gotta forward on mamas, make your move now. Forward on babas, make your move now. Forward, dear children, because freedom is right now. All right.
That was Sunni Patterson. This is Hard Knock Radio. Kalonji Changa filling in for Davey D. Sunny just blew the levee of the internet. You know what I'm saying? And peace is flowing in. So let it be known.
Yeah,
We'd like
sure.
to thank you for joining us today
Oh
on this
man, a
20-year
blessing indeed.
commemoration. No doubt. Love to the family. We'll see you soon. And
Always.
we will win in spite of ourselves.
Ooh, I know it and I believe it wholeheartedly.
True indeed. We are out.
Hard Knock Radio, rocking with Picasso.
What?
And Maya.
Who?
My last name is Susanna.